Yo, what's up? Alright, I'm gonna continue reading the book. From 94. How many pages left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Damn, 11 pages left. Okay, give me a couple minutes then. And you come running out and tell you like this, frowner. I'm going now. George turned and went quite quickly out of the barn. Old Candy watched them go. He looked helplessly back at Curly's wife, and gradually his sorrow and his anger grew into his words. You goddamn tramp, he said viciously. You done it, didn't you? I suppose you glad. Everybody know you'd mess things up. You wasn't no good. You ain't no good now. You lousy tart. He sniveled and his voice shook. I couldn't have hold in the garden and washed the dishes for them guys. He paused and then went on in a sing-song, and he repeated the words. If there was a circus or a baseball game, we would have went to her. Just said, "Tell you to hell with work," and went to her. Never asked nobody to say so. And there'd been a pig and chickens, and in the winter, the little fat stove, and the rain coming, and it's just sitting there, his eyes blinded with tears, and he turned and went weakly out of the barn, and rubbed his bristly whiskers with his wrist stump. Outside, the noise of the game stopped. There was a rise of voices in question, a drum of running feet, and the men burst into the barn. Slim and Carson and young Wit and Curly, and Crooks keeping out of the tension range. Candy came after them, and last of all came George. George had put on his blue denim coat and buttoned it, and his black hat was pulled down low over his eyes. The men raced around the last stall. Their eyes found Curly's wife in the gloom. They stopped and stood still and looked. Then Slim went quietly over to her, and he felt her wrist. One lean finger touched her cheek, and then his hand went under his slightly twisted neck, and his fingers explored her neck. When he stood up, the men crowded near, and the spell was broken. Curly came suddenly to life. "I know who done it," he cried. "That big son of a bitch done it. I know he done it. Why, everybody's out. Alice was there playing horseshoes. He worked himself into a fury. I'm gonna get him. I'm going for my shotgun. I'll kill the big son of a bitch myself. I'll shoot him in the guts. Come on, you guys." He ran furiously out of the barn. Carson said, "I'll get my lugger, and he can run out too." Slim turned quietly to George. "I guess Lenny done all right," he said. Her neck's bust. Lenny coulda did that. George didn't answer, but he nodded slowly. His head was so far down his forehead that his eyes were covered. Slim went on. "Maybe like that time in the weed you was telling about." Again, George nodded. Slim sighed. I guess we got to get him where you think he might have went." It seemed to take George some time to free his words. "He could have went south," he said. We come from north, so he would have went south." "I guess we gotta get him," Slim repeated. George stepped close. "Couldn't we maybe bring him in and they'll lock him up?" He's nuts, Slim. He never done this to be mean. Slim nodded. We might, he said. If we could keep Curly then. We might, but Curly's gonna want to shoot him. Curly's still mad about his hand. And supposedly lock him up and strap him down and put him in a cage. That ain't no good, George. I know, said George. I know. Carson came running in. The bastards stole my lugger, he shouted. I aimed in my bag. Curly followed him, and Curly carried a shotgun in his good hand. Curly was cold now. All right, you guys, he said. The N-word's got a shotgun. You take it, Carlson. When you see him, don't give him no chance. Shoot for his guts. They'll double him over. With exactly. I ain't a shotgun. I ain't got a gun, Curly said. You go inside, lad, and get a cop. Get away out. He's the beauty sheriff. Let's go now. He turned suspiciously on George. You're coming with us, fella. Yes, said George. I'll come, but listen, Curly. The poor bastard's nuts. Don't shoot him. He didn't know what he was doing. Don't shoot him, Curly cried. He got Carson's lugger. Course we'll shoot him. George said weakly. Maybe Carson lost his gun. I seen it this morning, said Carson. No, it's been took. Slim stood looking down at Curly's wife. He said, Curly, maybe you better stay here with your wife. Curly face reddened. I'm going, he said. I'm gonna shoot the nuts out of the big bastard myself, even if I only got one hand. I'm gonna let him. Slim turned to Kenny. You stay here with her then, Kenny. The rest of us better get on. They moved away. George stopped a moment beside Kenny, and they both looked down at that girl until Curly called, You, George, you stick with us so we don't think you had nothing to do with us. George moved slowly after them, and his feet dragged heavily. And when they were gone, Kenny squatted down in the hay, and watched the face of Curly's wife. Poor bastard, he said softly. The sound of the men grew fainter. The barn was darkening gradually, and in their stalls, the horses shifted their feet and rattled the halter chains. Old Kenny lay down in the hay and covered his eyes with his arm. Alright, so I finished the second chapter. And wait, hold on a second. What is this? There. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. The deep green pool of the Salinas River was still in the later afternoon. Already the sun had left the valley to go climbing up the slopes of the Gavilan Mountains, and the hilltops were rosy in the sun. But by the pool among the mottled sycamores, a pleasant shade had fallen. A water snake glided smoothly up the pool, twisting its periscope head from side to side, and it swam to length of the pool and came to the legs of motionless heron that stood in the shallows. A silent head and beak glanced down and plucked it up at the hand, and the beak swallowed the little snake while its tail waved frantically. A far rush of wind sounded, and the gust drove through the tops of the trees like a wave. The sycamore leaves turned up their slivers sides. The brown, dry leaves on the ground scudded a few feet, and row in a row of tiny waves flowed up the pool's green surface. As quickly as it had come, the wind died, and the clearing was quiet again. The heron stood in the shallows, motionless and waiting. Another little water snake swam up to the pool, turning its periscope head from side to side. Suddenly, Lenny appeared out of the brush, and he came as silently as a creeping bear moves. A heron pounded the air with his wings. Jack itself cleared the water and flew up down river. The little snake slid in among the reeds at the pool's side. Lenny came quietly to the pool's edge. He knelt down and drank, barely touching his lips to the water. When a little bird skittered over the dry leaves behind him, his head jerked up and he strained toward the sound with eyes and ears until he saw the bird. And he dropped his head and drank again. When he was finished, he sat down on the bank with his side to the pool so that he could watch the trail's entrance. He embraced his knees and laid his chin down on his knees. The light climbed down out of the valley. As it went, the tops of the most mountains seemed to blaze with increasing brightness. Lenny said softly, "I didn't forget. You bet. Goddamn, hide in the brush and wait for George. He pulls his head down low over his eyes. "George gonna give me hell, he said. "George gonna wish he was alone and not have me bothering him." He turned his head and looked at the bright mountain tops. "I can go right up there and find a cave," he said, and he continued sadly, and never have no ketchup. "But I won't care. If George don't want me, I'll go away. And then from out of Lanny's head there came a little fat old woman. She wore thick bull-eyes glasses, and she wore a huge gingham apron with pockets, and she was starched and clean. She stood in front of Lenny and put her hands on her lips. She frowned disapprovingly at him, and when she spoke, it was in Lenny's voice. "I told you," she said. "I told you, meant George, because he's such a nice fella and good to you, but you don't never take no care. You do bad things." Lenny answered her. "I tried, Aunt Clara, ma'am. I tried and tried. I couldn't help it. You never give a thought to George," she went on in Lenny's voice. He been doing nice things for you at a time. When he got a piece of pie, you always got half or more than half. And if there was any ketchup, why he'd give it all to you." "I know," said Lenny miserably. "I tried, Aunt Clara, ma'am. I tried. She interrupted him. "All the time he couldn't have had such a good time if it wasn't for you. He would have took his pay and raised hell in the warehouse, and he could have sat in the pool room and played snooker, but he got to take care of you." Lenny's moaned with grief. "I know, Aunt Clara, ma'am. I'll go right off in the hills, and I'll find a cave, and I'll live there so I won't be no more trouble to George." You just say that," she said sharply. "You're always saying that, and you know, son of a bitching, well, you ain't never gonna do it. You just stick around and steal the bitches out of George all the time." Lenny said, "I might just as well go away. George ain't gonna let me tend no rabbits now." Alright, that's for today, and I'll continue reading from the page 100, and next time will be the finish. I will finish the whole book. Alright, so that's for today, and if you like the video, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.